So, seems like that everyone is in the room, would like to join the session. I'm very proud to tell you about an incident we had 2.5 years ago and the process we started after this incident. But at first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tobias Pflüger. I'm a member of the fire service in Frankfurt. I did my studies 10 years, or I started my studies 10 years ago in Magdeburg. And after my studies, I started in a training program that is usual in Germany to start when you become a firefighter. You'd have to do a 2-year training program. And after that, I became a firefighter in April 2012, right 2 months before the incident, what I'm talking about today. My normal job is on a research project from the German government, where we discuss how fast the fire service should be on scene to rescue people. So I'm also a researcher in the fire service. So at first I would like to give you some information about the structure of Frankfurt and the Frankfurt Fire and Rescue Service, that you have a kind of overview what the fire service is about. Then an overview of the incident scene and the course of operations, then the prevailing conditions, and what we found out, what led us to a situation that is quite not handling for the fire service in Frankfurt and I guess nowhere in the world. And then I would like to tell you what our next steps had been and kind of conclusion we now have. So let's start with Frankfurt. Frankfurt is very famous in Germany for its skyline, for the skyline of the city. We have a lot of skyscrapers and high-rises in the city, more than 100 high-rises above 100 meters. This is what one of the most parts of the fire prevention work is in Frankfurt. And we normally have no such big incidents in these buildings. But we have also a very big transport topic in the fire service. We have an airport, which is one of the biggest in Europe. And we have 2 of the most frequented highways in Germany, also within the city borders. Therefore, we have around about 1,600 persons operational staff, which means firefighters, as well 800 professionals and 800 volunteer firefighters. And we have 147 firefighters on duty every day, 24/7. We're dislocated in 12 stations. We have 8 small stations, roundabout only an engine, sometimes additional ladder, and 4 bigger stations. And for this presentation, it's this main station of fire service main station is the closest station in this incident. In Germany, we talk about the intervention time also. I told you about my research project. And we have an intervention time in Hessen, where it's the state I'm coming from, and Frankfurt is, of 10 minutes after the call arrives in the dispatch center. And the fire service is turning out. This is 10 minutes in Hessian. But in Frankfurt, we have a shorter intervention time by a local law that leads us to turn out and arrive in 6 minutes 30 seconds. That is much faster than the normal Hessian law said. As a Frankfurt resolution. So we are one of the fastest arriving fire services in Germany, and one of the incident scenes we had to arrive very quickly and find out that it's not possible to deal with the fire is property in the Adickes-Allee in Frankfurt. The Adickes-Allee is one of the main roads out of the city to the west of Frankfurt. So there's a lot of traffic, especially to the rush hour. It's leading also outside the city and also inside the city. The building is a 6th-floor former office building, and it was renovated to become student flats. We have really big problems with flats in Frankfurt, so we have not too much of them. So a lot of bankers live in student flats, so it's a high-class student flat building. You pay 700 euros for 20 square meters. So that's quite a lot in Frankfurt. And when we arrived on scene, the building was completely surrounded by scaffolding. That was a very important fact on this incident. So I will give you a short idea of where we are in Frankfurt. This is the main station where the whole fire officers do their daily work. And this is the incident scene. And right here you have this very big building is a police main station where 1,000 police officers do their daily work. Directly on the other side of the Adikus-Allee, which is this street. And outside the city it leads to a highway. So we have a really big there are really much traffic on this street, especially at that time of day when we had this incident. And another very important fact on this incident, or positive effect on this incident, is that the Hessian Broadcasting Corporation is also located 150 meters away from the incident scene. I will tell you later on why it's such an important thing to this incident. If you have questions, please ask questions when you have them, not at the end, because otherwise I have to go back and we have to look where the question is right placed. So that is what it looks like on the scene. There's one sheet missing, damned. It was. I told you I had been 2 months in the fire service at that day. It was the end of May, one of the first really warm days in this year. And I have to tell you that I hadn't been there because at that time I had prepared a barbecue for some fire officers who started with me at the Frankfurt Fire Service. And all of them had been on my balcony or started a party at my balcony, and we looked to the straight other side of Frankfurt and enjoyed the skyline instead of enjoying a big smoke palm above the city. The incident happened on around about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was a really big incident in our opinion, or in our standards, because we had 2 incident commanders of the level C, 1 incident commander B, and the citywide tour commander, the A unit. And also our boss, the head of the fire department, had been on scene because it wasn't dramatically increasing or fast fire spread in this scene. And it was absolutely clear that this will lead to questions after the incident. So that this incident will lead questions after the incident. And we had the luck, it was 5 o'clock. At the building site, they still worked. And the site engineer was always also there, which is very important to get information about the building. So, in total we used 20 SCBAs, which is not so much when you think about the building size, and a lot of nozzles and turning nozzles from our turntable ladders, which capacity of 2,000 liters per minute. And I have to say we put a lot of water, sometimes more than 10,000 liters a minute on the fire, but we didn't extinguish it. The fire ran out of fuel and it extinguished itself. So let's go to the course of operation. At 5 minutes after 5, we had the first calls in our emergency dispatch center telling us about a 5-meter high flame on a building site or construction site. This was a police officer on the direct other side of the street who could have a look all the time on this scene. And after the incident, we had to talk to the engineer of this building site, who was one of the first who saw the fire in the first time when it was knee-high, roundabout, and then he go to the back of the building and tried to find a fire extinguisher. And we got back, we had the height of 5 meters, so the fire started maybe round about 3 minutes earlier, 2 minutes earlier. We don't know that exactly. That's why in the presentation we have only the call which reported us from 5-meter high flames. That was a moment when our dispatch center went crazy because we had more than 60 emergency calls in some minutes. The next call is from 6 after 5, and it's also telling us about heavy smoke and all, and people running out of the scaffolding, and very dramatic scene, which is explained on phone to our dispatchers. We also received a phone call from Wiesbaden. Wiesbaden is around about 40-50 kilometers away from Frankfurt, and they also saw the smoke above Frankfurt and asked if there's still everything okay, because the Wiesbaden dispatch center received the call on the emergency line, and the Wiesbaden colleagues thought, well, if there's such a big fire, we would have recognized it, but that was a moment when we still had calls from Frankfurt, and even no person of the fire service is on scene. So it's in between the time of, we're now here, something around about 5 o'clock, 6 after and 11 minutes after 5 o'clock. You see a picture which is took by a neighbor from his balcony. He tried the same what I did. He tried to do a barbecue, but his view was a bit better on the scene than mine. As you can see, there's no fire service truck in here, and you must have seen it when the trucks arrive. And this is a picture of the Hessian Broadcast Center. They sent immediately a team to the incident scene, which has been faster than we had. And this is a picture, in the back there is a fire station, the police station, excuse me. What you also see is an enormous pool fire, kind of, on this sidewalk here. And the starting transporters and other cars who parked in front of the building, they also started to ignite and burn at this time. At 11 after 5, round about 8 minutes after the fire ignites, the first truck arrived, and there's also round about 4 minutes after the first call in the dispatch center had been recognized. So if you talk about how fast fire service should be on scene, that was very fast in our opinion, and we had a large number of cars sent at this time of the incident, and we had such a big fire spread that you can't handle with one engine. We sent out 3 engines at this time, and the first officer on the scene arrived together or nearly together with the first engine, and he turned into an F4, which means F is fire and 4 is 4 engines. And this is around about 10 minutes after the fire ignites. What you also see is that the scaffolding is kind of unstable, so it's moving away from the building, and you see that the upper parts of the building completely finished with the exterior work. That is what it looked like when the fire began to shrink, and the heat was reduced, and the hard cover, the armoring, was falling down off the building, and the polystyrene facade behind this armoring was still burning. But this was a moment of the incident where the fire nearly stops, you have to say. This is the fire we fought. The other fire you saw in the beginning is the fire which was extinguishing by running out of fuel. So this is what our boss, our fire chief in Frankfurt, called it looked like war, because all these containers had burned. You see 1 car, but there had been 3 cars completely burned. This is the sidewalk where the fire had been. We had sporting concrete there, and it was a really much heat, or really much heat had been produced. So the trees on where the photographer is standing under also burned. And we were very lucky that there's a green stripe between two streets next to the building. So the next buildings had been more than 20 meters away. So if you think that there's, like it's normal in Frankfurt, there's directly on the other side of the street the next building, we may have a fire also in these buildings. So this is approximately 17 minutes after the fire starts, in our opinion. So 40 minutes later, we had the fire under control sign, which is the signal to our dispatch center that this is a cold case. That means we don't need any engines more or additional stuff. And now we started with the extinguishing work of the facade parts that we don't reach from the outside. So we worked with 3 ladders at that time to open the hard cover of the exterior finishing system and try to extinguish the rests of the polystyrene facade. What you see here is that we opened the facade on the penthouse level of this building, and you see that there is no polystyrene left. The hardcover was closed like this, but the polystyrene underneath the armoring was completely melted down. What you see here is the glue, which fixed the polystyrene facade, and the complete, the melted polystyrene looks like a glue, and this was completely melted down to here, and we had a thick raw oil looked like mass that could have burned, but it doesn't ignite because the armoring was still in function. The opening is forced by the fire service, and so the polystyrene couldn't ignite. What you also see is what was a really good point at this time of the building site. They had prepared for balconies, a preparation for balconies on the front of the building. So the scaffolding was, when it starts to moving downwards, it hang up on this beams. So the scaffold doesn't fall on the street on our firefighters. You will see some pictures. I guess it's the next one. No. This is scaffolding. Looks like very unstable, and we had to secure it. And this was also a task which took us quite a long time, I have to say. And at 6 minutes after 8 o'clock, 3 minutes after the fire started, we had the fire extinguished sign, which means everyone can go home. So not too much time at this point. What I would like to tell you about this incident is that the building was still in a construction period, and only this part of the facade to the side street had been really completed. Other parts hadn't been completely finished. So you can see here the gray mass. This is the polystyrene facade, and only in the upper parts there's the hardcover or the armoring. And what we also have to say now is, or what we knew now is that much of the burning polystyrene in front of the building was from stored polystyrene in front of the building. So it's not only the polystyrene which melted down the wall, it's also polystyrene which was in front of the building. So we had been very lucky because the building wasn't in use yet. The rooms had been completely empty. They plan to start the interior work next week, the week after the incident, and there was nothing that could burn in the rooms of this flat building. So every fire that we saw is the facade fire, and the heat was such intense that the aluminum profiles of the windows melted, and we had concrete damage within the room. So the heat must be very high in the rooms, even if there had been no fuel load or fire in the rooms. Oh, sorry. And only construction workers had been on the building site at this time, and due to the late hours of the day, that hadn't been so much workers at this period. So everyone could leave the scaffolding by their own, and there was no work done inside the building at this point. And this is also a very good fact that we had this information from the very first moment of arriving of an engine. So we didn't have to start an interior searching for persons, and we didn't have to send teams inside the building. So we had to we could start the extinguishing work completely from the outside, and was our first goal was to fight the fire and not to search for persons maybe that in the building. We had an enormous smoke spread in the building, and the whole building was completely dark by the smoke. And there are now living 150 persons in this building. So if the building would be in use now, it is, and it would be night time, we may have some fatalities and a lot of injured people, but this was only a construction site. And we had quite good weather conditions. I told you about the beginning summer, and the smoke just could rise up. So we had a problem that other buildings had to be evacuated, or other work caused by the smoke damage for us. So what we found out. In Germany, we have a lot of buildings who are insulated with polystyrene. It's the most common building material that is used, and we have thicknesses from 10 centimeters to 40 centimeters. It's a normal standard. It's more above 30 centimeters right now. This is due to the building regulations and energy saving regulations in Germany, that we are the leading country in insulating with polystyrene. And when the polystyrene systems or insulating systems first had been tested by the German Institute for Civil Engineering, they had always a focus on a fire that starts in the building, a room fire, which breaks the window and the flames came out the window and move up the facade. Was always their opinion. And that is what they find out in the testings 15 years ago, that when they build fire barriers like this, with a not burnable material, every second floor, I have here a picture, then the fire spread is maximum to the next floor, but not above this fire barrier. That's also allowed to put the fire barrier above every window, but on construction site, you never see this opportunity. You always find this style, because it's much easier to do on the construction site. So at this time, we had the non-flammable flame barrier, which had a height of 10 centimeters. So in this building, we had 32 centimeter thick polystyrene and a 10 centimeter high fire barrier. And that is what the fire barrier looks like after the fire. The manufacturers told us that we pulled down the fire barrier after the fire was extinguished, but an engineer found out that it was thrown away by the falling AIMA ring, which means that the AIMA ring was burning above the fire barrier and also under the fire barrier. That is what an engineer found out. Yeah, sorry. What you can also see is that this side is a side where the armoring was, or the facade was completed. The full armoring was on top of the polystyrene, and the fire barrier had been finished, as you see here. And this part of the work were done. On the side of the Adickes-Allee, which is here, the lower parts of the building hadn't been finished. They didn't have the armoring. And what you see here is like an inverse fire. That the fire or the material melted more in the lower parts away than in the upper parts. That's completely different than you expected, like a normal fire. You would expect more like this form. But we think that it's a problem of the ground fire that was also in this area, and the wind came from this direction and blew away the smoke from the building. That's our opinion why this happened in this incident, not like you expected. But you see another point. The not finished isolated or finished armored isolation system didn't burn the complete height. But the finished system burned over the whole building height. So there must be a problem when the armoring is on the polystyrene. And when you think of you build a wood piece to make a fire, you dig a hole into the wood piece so that the fire can heat all the surrounding. And this is what happened here. The hard cover and the armoring was on one side. The fire was in between, melted the polystyrene, and the melting polystyrene was attached to the armoring and also to the wall. So it was kind of effect that the fire was more like forced to the upper parts. I forgot the word in English. I'm sorry. It's Kamin effect. Maybe someone knows. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So this is what we saw on the incident scene.
You mean that the facade fell down, unburned, and you found remains on the street, or did it burn well?
Remains of the polystyrene or the parts? The question is if we found remains of the facade on the street. We found it not on the street but on the scaffolding because it's an unburnable material, which is it's puts uncombustible material, mineral material. Yeah, and it was and also a plastic wrap which is attached to the polystyrene surface that the puts could attach to the polystyrene. And what we also see is that, or what we know is, you can't see it here on the picture, when you go close you see it better, that the fire barrier was glued to the wall, and this glue wasn't heat resistant. Yeah, it's not necessary. Okay. From that point of view of the fire service, we recognize that there are maybe new incidents that we can't handle. We saw on the incident scene we can't handle the fire, and after the incident we got the whole timeline, which is very uncommon for a fire. I guess also in the Netherlands that you have a reporting fire from the moment of igniting to the very first arrival of the engine. And so we knew that it was a very short period of time. We find out that even a very powerful fire service like Frankfurt, I mean, we have 150 firefighters on duty in 24/7, which is quite a lot in Germany. We can't handle this fire. We didn't have the time to react because the fire spread in such an enormous speed that we can't deal this problem. So what is the first thing you would do? I guess you ask other fire services if they had the problem before. So we did the same in our next steps. We asked every relevant fire service organization, as well volunteer fire services, professional fire services, and plant fire service organization, if they had incidents relating to polystyrene facade systems, and what their opinion is about that. We asked them to send us every incident with a report, with pictures, and we collected them. Because we had also discussions with the manufacturers. They told us that isn't the problem of the system. The system is tested, it's evaluated, and it's certificated. So that couldn't be a problem of the manufacturers or the system. Then we also had discussions with politicians. And in Germany, the goal of reducing carbon dioxide and energy saving rules are a very high goal of the German politician parties, of every one of them. So it's very uncommon to tell them that there might be problems by insulating houses. Even if the most common system in Germany, we have millions of square meters each year, which is installed in buildings right now. The most common system seem to have problems. So we discussed the problem also with technical bodies, such as the German Institute for Building Technologies, which is responsible to certificate and prepare the testings of building materials and systems. And they all said, well, we had the fire testings in front. Before we certificate the systems, we had full-scale fire testings. And they asked us what our problem is. And the most important part of this discussion was that we had a complete timeline. Because we couldn't say, or they couldn't say, you arrived too late, or there was no opportunities than a fast fire spread. So every other discussion was stopped at this moment, and we had at this point a collection of more than 100 incidents in all Germany relating burning facades with polystyrene. Not all of them had been such big incidents like ours, but also some smaller fires caused fatalities, and some older fires, which also caused fatalities, had been discussed down because the building regulations hadn't been followed at this building. It was in Berlin. Maybe some of you know the incident. It was in 2003, I guess, with 2 fatalities, and the BAM, the German Institute for testing materials, building materials, did a research program on this incident and find out that it was part the polystyrene on the building facade, but also not followed rules for installing the systems. But on this incident in Frankfurt, we had a completely built and rule-followed systems. So it must be something wrong with the system, the used materials, or the regulations. And this was transported into the conference of the building ministers in Germany. In Germany, it's the response for building technology is by the state, but the building regulation is responsible the state. So we have 16 building ministers who talk in this conference of the building ministers' actual problems. And we presented this topic to them, and also the working group 5. Well, it seems like a bit typical German, that everything is in different conferences and in working groups. But the other working group 5 of the conference, of the Interior Minister Conference, is the working group which is responsible for the fire service. So it was we took 2 ways into the parties and relevant working groups to get an ear there. Because it's very unusual that a fire service is saying, hey, we have a problem, we can handle this problem, and maybe people will die because of this problem. It's very uncommon. Excuse me.
You collected hundreds of these incidents.
Right.
How many people got injured? How many people died because of this situation? Or is it easy like this to connect it to this type of material?
The question is if or how many people are injured by incidents with facade systems. It's very difficult to relate directly to the incident. As you see the case in Berlin, there 2 people died. There was also polystyrene in the building, but you can't only relate to the material. It's the same happen, or nearly the same happened in Düsseldorf at the airport fire. There was 16 fatalities, I guess. I'm not absolutely sure. And also polystyrene was involved. But the polystyrene had been used in the ceiling, and in Germany it's not allowed to use polystyrene within the building or in the ceiling in this kind of buildings, you have to say. So it's very difficult to relate that directly. But we have some fires with a significant involving of the polystyrene, and I don't have the numbers, I'm sorry. We now, today, have much more, even if you stop the active work on this list, we still get information about incidents relating to the polystyrene. In Germany, there are if you build or rebuild a building, then you have to insulate the building. And the only option is, nearly the only option is polystyrene, because we need so much insulating function in the walls that maybe other non-burnable options like rock wall or something like this is very useful on the construction side, because they have problems to get a nice wall with rock wall or something like this. So the very thick wall systems are very difficult to build with other materials than polystyrene. So I guess also in the Netherlands there are discussion about passive houses. So when this discussion increases, you will also see much more of the polystyrene systems in the Netherlands. There are other options with rock wall. There's the opportunity to build a brick wall on the outside. Then you have rock wall in a kind of sandwich construction, and then you have the normal house wall. In Germany we call it verlorene Schalung. This is very fire safe and it's very good for the house climate, but I guess it's more than third the price than the polystyrene facade. That's a problem. And also the technical problems on the construction side. At this point we discussed with the building minister conference and let all the informations know them. And I forgot one fact. At this point of the discussion, we as fire service in Frankfurt hadn't been involved anymore into the process, because leading fire service in Frankfurt about fire preventing, which was responsible for this case, is up to now is Munich, and we gave all our informations to the officer in Munich, and he transported the information into the building minister conference and all other working groups in the political area. So we hadn't been involved anymore, but we are still kind of experts, because we have seen an incident which was a dramatically incident, and so they wouldn't let us go without our knowledge. They contacted us. The question is if the contributors or manufacturers of the systems contacted us. or we contacted them. We contacted at first they contacted us because the day after the incident there was a big kind of news magazine in the television, and there was one sentence my boss said. This was very I don't know how to explain, but it was very rough against the industry. And then they sent us the lawyers and the letters of the lawyers that we should be more quiet because it's our tested systems, they are certificated and all the stuff. And so it was very good that the fire department or fire service in Munich took over the next part with the political parties and relevant organizations and stuff like that. And in March 2013, nearly 1 year after this incident, the Hessian Minister for Economics, Transport and Regional Development, it's now another department or another name that's changing really often. This minister is responsible for building technologies in Hessen, the state of Hessen. And he was at that time the chairman of the German Building Minister Conference. And he was the first, this was the first press release where political parties accepted that there is an issue or there's a problem with polystyrene facades. And as you can see here, there should be an, I guess I hope it's also in this text, that there should be a working group again who should discuss this problem and find out what the real problem is or the real issue is. One of the most important words is that that also rubbish containers should be or maybe a problem. I told you that all the time when the systems had been tested years ago, when they get their certification and stuff like that, they always thought about a fire starting in the building and spreading, and the flames came out of the window, and that this flames ignites the facade. But in our case, the fire started in front of the building, and in our collection of this 100 incidents, we had many incidents with a starting fire in front of the building. Even, or especially the heavy incidents had been started outside of the building. Yes, so, yeah.
The building was surrounded with workers' platforms. Those workers' platforms are covered for wind and rain with plastic covers. Had this material influenced this fire?
The question is if plastic materials which saves the scaffolding from rain and wind, if they had involved in the fire. Yes, they had involved, but we don't know how dramatically. But we had other incidents where the building wasn't scaffolded and still for some years in use. So also other buildings had the problem even if they're not scaffolded.
The speed of spreading the fire could be influenced.
That's true. This was a real incident. It wasn't a scientific research project. The producers told us at the beginning that one of the reasons of the enormous fire spread was the scaffolding, and that the wooden beam on the ground of the scaffolding caused also to the fire. But on our pictures we saw that all of the wooden beams had been still in function. We had pictures where the workers who deconstructed this melted scaffolding walked on them. So they couldn't burn too much down. They still have a thickness where you can bear a person. So the fire was so fast that it wasn't too much burned down, the beam. We don't know it, I have to be honest, but we had other cases where no scaffolding had been involved, and there is also enormous fast fire spread. Okay, so now we invent a working group, and the working group is also supported by an expert group. So every party is involved in this, not every party, every responsible part of the producing and building part and the fire service and the regulation organizations had been involved in this working group and also in the expert group. And they at first had to define the test conditions. What is the problem? Now we have, again, the rubbish bin. It was clear that there is a fire, that the new test will have a fire which starts in front of a building. And we find out that the problem is a big fuel load in front of the building. In our case, it had been stored polystyrene in front of the building. And then perform the test, analyze and evaluate the test, then find out what new conditions to install or use. There was never a discussion about binding them in Germany, and then integrate into regulations. And now I have to tell you that we all signed an application, or that I have to be, that I'm not allowed to tell you something about this process. But what I can tell you now is that the process is working for more than 1 year, and the test conditions had been defined a long time ago. The tests, 3 of them had been performed. And the analyze and evaluation of this test had also, 1 second, I have a new sheet. So this is what the actual status is today. And what I'm also very proud to tell you is that this week we will have a press release of the German Institute for Building Code, Testing and Building Codes, which will say that there are new ideas of how the polystyrene system should attach to walls. So we now have a conclusion in this process. I can't show you this press release because it's announced somewhere this week. I hope that it will be today or yesterday, but in the break I had a look on the website of the institute and they hadn't released it yet. So I can tell you what other nations are doing right now. Maybe it's also an idea for Germany. In Switzerland and Austria, they have these fire barriers after every floor. So every floor is a fire compartment as its own. And there's also a fire barrier on the very lowest part of the system. Also 10 centimeters. The lowest part depends on how the building or the insulation system is built. So it's just the lowest part. The insulation system has to start with a non-flammable material in Austria. And so the fire couldn't, if the fire is starting in the basement and basement windows are broke, then the flames came under to the lowest part of the system, and this fire barrier should stop these flames. And there's also in other nations a discussion about how to attach these fire barriers, and it's now everywhere it's allowed to glue this system, but there may be other connection systems available. They are more heat resistant. But there's a very serious issue with the thermal. If you use metal screws on the system, even under the armor ring, you will see them after 2 or 3 years on the outside of the wall, because it's a different thermal behavior, and that will lead to what is it in Dutch? you will see them through the wall. So that is one of the problems we're dealing now with, and but this is kind of solution we expect. And what we know from other fires is what happened on our construction site. The fire in front of the building, let me guess that here is a fire, and the heat is, or the radiation is heating up the hammering front, and then the polystyrene start to melt, and it's flowing down within this space between the armoring and the wall, and then you have, or let me tell here, you have melted polystyrene like a pool above this fire barrier, and if you have no more polystyrene under this fire barrier, the fire barrier will break down because all the load is now on the fire barrier, and this will lead that the armoring will break down. So we have at first kind of convex situation that the armoring is going out, and then when the fire barrier is breaking or losing its bearing, then the armoring will break, and we will have air in the space in between, and then this wonderful effect. What's also a problem, which we didn't knew, but the experts told us, is that birds love this kind of wall construction to build nests. So there will be maybe a regulation that people have to repair the facade immediately with polystyrene, or when is it a polystyrene facade, they have to repair the facade immediately when they recognized that there is some kind of problem with the hard cover or the armoring. And we often have the rubbish bins in front of buildings, and when they're opened, they make also holes into this armoring part of the into the armoring, and there are also damage caused in the lower parts of this system. And these are a major problem. It seemed like that is a major problem in the most of the cases in Germany. Not like we had an open facade on one side, so the fire or the air could start from the side into the space in between the armoring and the wall. And in whole Germany, it seems like that there the broken parts of this armoring are the most problem. So, hope you know. Don't tell anyone what I told you. But what we think of this process is that it's not only that the fire service shouldn't always look on his own capabilities, and must think that every problem in the world should be solved by the fire service. There are other organizations who are responsible for building, for example, for building conditions or building regulations, and they are also responsible. Let them know. We know that dirty knowledge in Germany, and give them the dirty knowledge that they have a problem, and they will solve it for you. So, any more questions? Yes.
The thickness of the insulation could be an important factor in the fire behavior. In the testing you performed, did you vary in the thickness of this insulation layer?
I can't tell you that.
You're not allowed?
I'm not allowed. Not yet. It's the press release. I could tell you everything about this process, but this is one thing I'm not allowed to tell right now.
When it's available for the public, do you send the information to this institute? So
The testing protocols and stuff like this will be still not for public. I don't know if a Netherlands institute can ask for this report. I can't tell you exactly. I know that our agreement with the parties will end when the press release is out, but I can't tell you about what is with the paperwork. I'm sorry about that. But it's an important part of this work, because the manufacturers have a really big lobbying part or interest, very good connections, politicians, and so to keep the working process secretly makes it more based on facts. So the lobbying didn't start into the process of evaluating things or testing and researching. So you can do the work on your own and present a result. And this is what we do anytime this week.
It's sort of problem with a 6-story building. We also use it on the skyscrapers.
In Germany, no, it's not allowed to cover or insulate buildings with more than 23 meters height with flammable or burnable materials. So a case like in France couldn't happen in Germany if they follow the rules.
Okay. They're not allowed about that height.
Yeah, as you might remember, the building in Frankfurt was 22 meters high. But this didn't include the penthouse area. So we're still not sure if it was legal.
Then the problem with all the people with the houses, with the insulation, it's not safe.
I didn't understood.
There are a lot of buildings built with this kind of insulation, which seems not to be safe.
Yeah. The question is that the buildings who are already insulated with the system are not safe. You have to say it's true. We improved the system, but in old buildings we don't have the ability to force them to redo or renovate their houses and their insulating system. So we just can say what they can do to improve their houses or reduce the fire risk of a facade fire. So we have there are some rules on our webpage coming up when the press release will come out, which say that there should be rubbish cans and stuff like that, or car parks should be more than 3 meters away from these systems. But we all know that it's very difficult in a city like Frankfurt to put every car 3 meters away from the facade, or that it's just not practical to push the garbage out of the housing areas. That's what it's necessary. Yeah.
Is there some kind of special education or special tactics or methods when it's about an incident like this?
Special tactics of the fire service. We thought about producing tactics or advice for fire services, but when you have a response time of 3 minutes and the fire is starting to shrink or is running out of fuel, then you don't need a special tactic.
So the main question is it first put the water on the fire or saving lives? This is also, I don't know if you asked yourself this question.
In Germany, the fire service don't have such strict guidelines. In this case, you do that. It always depends on the first incident commander, which is maybe the incident commander on the engine. And he has to decide if it's, we could call it an aggressive tactic or an evacuation tactic, which is more useful. In this case, I would decide, and if the building is full with people, an aggressive tactic. Because if the fire is still burning, then you need to fight down the fire, because you even have no chance to rescue 150 people. Or on this front, it maybe had been 30 or 40 rooms that have been involved directly. You can't search these rooms. It's just impossible. We had one engine with two SCBA teams. After 3 minutes or 10 minutes after the incident happened, on scene, and how should they rescue more than 2 people which are not able anymore to move? So I would prefer an aggressive tactic, but this is always the decision of the first incident commander. more questions.
One question. You put 10,000 in water per minute.
Yeah.
Where do you get the water? Where do you get the water from?
We have a very good hydrant system in Frankfurt, and we have a half-meter diameter water pipe under the street, in this street. So water wasn't absolutely no problem. But we also have an increasing problem with water supply in Frankfurt. And we have the normal distance between two hydrants is 120 meter in the city, on the street. So normally we don't have problems with water supply in normal fires. 10,000 liters is quite some water, and it was to the peak. It wasn't all constantly. Yeah.
Did the other stations responding have trouble with the traffic? Because you said it was.
The question is if other stations had problems to go there. The next crossing is the last crossing before the highway, and we had 1,000 police officers directly on the other side of the building, and that was quite helpful to deal with the traffic problem. So we didn't have real traffic problems at this point. But on the street, it's normally much more a problem than on other streets. That's true. It was even rush hour. Yeah, but not in this case, because everyone in the fire police station recognized that there is something terrible happen, and they had an announcement in the whole building to close the windows because of a fire in front of the building. So they closed the doors and the windows and go out of the building and watch us. So that wasn't that big problem in this case. So, no more questions? Then I thank you for your attention. I hope I had some information for you and your work in other fire services or other organizations, how to deal with uncommon problems. And if you have some questions after this session, we're in time again. That's quite perfect. So I will be here the next hour, then I have to leave because I have to be on duty tomorrow. And so thank you.